Hawkman Found #1, Jeff Lemire writing and Brian Hitch on art. Although, as the credit page would call him, Jeff Lemire.
Lemire. Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, there's one of the letters, I think
Yeah,
it's
I
the E's
did.
missing. Yeah.
Yep.
Amusing.
Lemire, it's the I.
Was it the I? Sorry, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Lemire.
Mm-hmm.
Lemire.
Lemire. Now, Pete, let me ask, how familiar are you with Hawkman?
Oh, I feel like Hawkman's a character I've interacted with a lot of times across a lot of comic books, across showing up in multiple TV shows, and somehow I feel like I've never really learned properly about him because every time I encounter him, his backstory is just a little bit different.
Yeah, so
It's hard to get a handle on him, you know?
so I knew this was coming, so I started reading the Johns Robinson Hawkman from the early 2000s. And with all the other comics we've been reading, it's taken a back seat. But over the Christmas break, I had some extra time, so I whaled through it. And I finished, no joke, a day before this came out. And I gotta say, having read the Johns Hawkman and then read this, it makes it a much better read. I feel if you're familiar at all with that, you can connect to the whole cycle of Hawkman. It's all about the legacy of the Hawks and how Johns and Robinson, as Pete was saying, the origins were a mess. Because some of the time he was an archaeologist that was a reborn Egyptian prince. And
Yeah. Sometimes he's an alien from the planet Thanagar.
sometimes he's an alien from Thanagar and part of a police force. And that's what the Hawks are. And to me, that's always the least interesting because I like,
I don't know. There's elements to it that are cool. It's nice to have a planet in space that we know quite well that's like thriving and functioning. So that's kind of a cool thing. But
so what Johns did was he did a little of both. Is that the appearance of the nth metal to ancient Egypt, but from a Thanagar ship or Thanagarian?
Yeah. Well, I think I knew that because I've read up until the Return of Hawkman in JSA.
Yeah.
So you get a bit of the backstory in that, yeah.
Yeah, so by doing that and combining them, you can have the best of both worlds. He can be reborn as a Hawk cop on Thanagar with as long as his beloved's there. And I just again the theme of rebirth and cycles really comes into play in Hawkman Found. But it doesn't leave it like from where Metal left us. I was hoping for a little bit more answers.
Yeah, there's no answers in this at all. This issue is just an inside his head recurring nightmare that keeps playing on a loop. That's all this issue is. And here's the thing, I'm kind of mixed on this issue because I think it's really well written. Lemire's voice for the character and all his narration is great. Some of the panels are great. I like the whole overall story of him. He wakes up, he's trapped in this weird world, and he's climbing the rock, he's fighting these hawk monsters, he gets up to this spaceship, and he takes the Hawkman armor for himself, he goes flying, and then he falls, and that's the end of his nightmare, and then he wakes up, and he just keeps repeating it, right? I like that, and the whole idea is that this is what's happening inside his head, but in the outside, he's really this big monstrous Hawkman that we saw at the end of Metal #4. Yeah. I like all that stuff in theory, I think it's well written. I do honestly feel, though, that I think this would have been better as a backup to a main issue or something like that. I feel like as a standalone issue that you have to pay for, this felt really unsatisfying as a read.
It was, but at the same time, I loved what I read, so I was just kind of maybe parse this out throughout Metal, or like you said, a backup in one of the crossovers or something.
Yeah.
Or even but because I did not enjoy what I read. I just calling it Hawkman Found after meeting this Hawk monster at the end of the last issue of Metal. I was kind of like, oh, cool. We'll see where that came from, and then we didn't get that, and that's more on my expectations. But
it still feels lost. Just because we end with that panel of seeing the big monstrous Hawkman again. It's all right. So we didn't really accomplish much in this. We got don't get me wrong. I like some of this stuff where you see in the character's head and they're trapped inside, but devoting the entire issue to that and not having any of how he actually transformed into this thing or anything like that, because he remembers as he's climbing the ship, he's like, oh, I'm starting to remember who I am. I remember getting the call from Challenger Mountain. I remember coming in and getting to the forge, and And so there's a little bit of it there, but there's not really any like the why or the how or the like any of that stuff.
Well, and I also like the commentary on the character because that's him every time. He discovers he's born in a new body, discovers he has this legacy of Khufu, the Egyptian prince, and then he's fated to die again so he can be reborn to do it again. And, so overall on the character, that's a cool take. Like, you gave us a footnotes version of the character.
I think the nicest thing I can say about this is that if we're teasing that Lemire's going to do a Hawkman series, I want to read it. Like, I want it. So I'll give it a win on that column.
It even teases the other identities, and they're the ones in the cave that won't come out. So Carter Hall keeps getting killed over and over again, but there's these other versions of him that can still live, even if Carter Hall can't for whatever reason. I also kind of wanted the Lady Blackhawk thing to be paid off a little bit. Like, what was that about in Metal?
Yeah, we don't know about that yet. Because I thought it might intercut with it, like that explanation as well. I mean, I wouldn't have been disappointed, or I'm disappointed without it.
No, but the fact that they're so connected, that Kendra and him, like, okay, so he fell and became this monster, and through timey-wimey shenanigans, that's what happens to her too. Because they're always going to be connected. Yeah, I would have liked a bridge there.
Yeah, the only mention of her is like the Hawkman villain, like in the ship, like says, "Oh, he's going to go after her next." Like that is the only mention you get of her the entire issue, really. Unless maybe he mentions it at one point in his narration, but that's about it. But there's no real tangible connection. So, I mean, it was an enjoyable enough read because it's well written, and I mean, I'm not a big fan of Hitch's art, but there's a few nice moments. I like the when he's climbing the rock looks quite good, and then when he jumps, he says, "To do this, I have to fly," and it's like him leaping from the rock to the ship. Like that's a really good, well-paced moment, I thought. So there's got some stuff in there, but it's just as a standalone issue that you have to pay on its own for. It is kind of a weird, like, non-thing. Yeah. So
I agree.
So by the way, shit on it too much because I think it's well written, and I think
that's it. That was my whole thing. Where like, I liked it, but I wanted more from it. Like,
And when they announced that Lemire was doing this, and they kind of teased that there might be a Hawkman ongoing from him in the future. Like, I want that now, so I'll call it a win overall. But I do think this is the sort of thing where I think when this is just added into the trade later with other stuff, it'll be a fine addition to the trade. As a standalone issue, maybe save your money.
Yeah, definitely, because it adds nothing really to the story. It's just a cool Hawkman tale,
Just an internal thought nightmare process, which I like the idea of, but it doesn't really add much.
That's Metal in a nutshell in the Dark Multiverse, right? They're all these nightmares, and so, but I'm just happy to have Lemire back at DC.
As am I.
I missed him.